welcome to another episode of CN Talks. Today we're pleased to have with us Mr. Omer Guy, General Counsel at the Digital Container Shipping Association, DCSA, to discuss one of the most significant milestones in the digitalization of global trade, interoperable electronic bills of lading, what also this breakthrough means for the shipping industry and how it could accelerate the transition towards fully digital trade documentation. So, Mr. Guy, for many years, as we know, the electronic bill of lading, eBL, has been promoted as a game-changing innovation. Yet, industry adoption has remained relatively slow. From your perspective right now, why has interoperability has been the missing piece of the puzzle?
Yes, hi, and good morning still. And thanks for the question.
Thank you.
Well, the transition from a paper bill of lading to a bill of lading in electronic format is not new. We've had eBLs, or the first eBL platform has been there since the late 90s, I think 1999. So it was never really a technology issue, right? It's existed for over 25 years. The barriers were really a legal barrier and a governance issue. And the biggest problem was that it was so-called digital islands. So the challenge was not to create an electronic bill of lading. It was more creating an ecosystem where people could trust each other and could trust the ecosystem itself, so also the platforms themselves. The biggest issue that we recognized a few years ago, about 5 years ago, when we started this journey together with the eBL solution providers out there, was that in order for a bill of lading or an electronic bill of lading transaction to work, all of the users interacting on a single eBL transaction, so that is a carrier who issues the bill of lading, but then also the shipper, who is the exporter or the seller, right? And also the buyer on the other side, but also all of the interested parties in the middle. It could be a bank, it could be a customs authority, it could be insurance companies. If they wanted to interact with that eBL, they had to be using that same platform, because there wasn't, first of all, there wasn't the technology yet back then. But even if you solve the technology issue, which is something we did relatively quickly at DCSA together with the platforms, there was still a legal issue. The problem with the bill of lading, the problem not with the bill of lading, but the problem with transferring the eBL or the bill of lading, sorry, to electronic format, is that the bill of lading, one of its most significant functions is that it acts as a document of title. What it means essentially is that if you are in possession of the bill of lading, a paper bill of lading, you are construed as having possession of the underlying goods represented by that bill of lading. We call it, in legalese, we call it constructive possession of the goods. Now, what that means is that you can only have one original bill of lading in circulation, because otherwise you have two people or more competing on the same rights that that person who is in possession of the bill has. Now, when you copy that into the electronic world, that's where you start creating all sorts of issues. Because, let's say, digitizing or making the document electronic is something quite easy. We've all heard of PDFs, right? You can take a document, a Word document, and turn it into a PDF. But if I send you a PDF through email, I could also send it to somebody else. And then how do we determine who holds the original bill of lading? Now, the platforms have done that within the platform itself. How do you do that across platforms, right? And that is essentially what we've solved together with the platforms, so that an eBL, a unique single eBL, can now be transferred between a user on one platform and a user on another platform.
Okay, I understand. I think that there are a lot of challenges about this new technology. All right. DCSA recently announced that 5 eBL solution providers have adopted the DCSA standard ANEX for eBL platform interoperability v.2 with approval also from the International Group of Protection and Indemnity Clubs. Why is this milestone so significant, and why do you believe it represents a turning point rather than just another technical achievement?
Yeah, so the bottom line is, or maybe if I start with the bottom line, is that this is not just another technical achievement. What we've achieved here, and again, I say we as in the entire ecosystem. So we at DCSA have been leading the discussions or bringing the eBL solution providers together, but it really is for the ecosystem itself. The moment interoperability, or at this moment, interoperability is starting to become a network, right? So what we had before, so it started with one platform, like I just described, right? We had all of the users having to onboard on a single platform. The first attempts on interoperability, what we did about 2 years ago, together with the eBL platforms, that was, let's call it bilateral connections, right? So there were 2 platforms who were able to interact between them, which is a good and an important step. But what we've done now is we've created a standard that all of these platforms can adopt. So that's what we do in DCSA. We create standards, right? And all of these platforms can adopt this standard in a kind of a plug and play situation, right? They can just add it to their rulebook. And what that means is that all of these platforms can now connect to each other. And it's no longer a bilateral connection, but potentially we're talking about a network of different platforms. Now, what this means is that if I used to use one platform and I'm a user, let's say I'm a carrier or I'm a BCO, an exporter, a big seller, if I connected to a platform, I connected to many other users of that platform. What this means now is you connect to one, you connect to all. You connect to one platform, you potentially connect to all of the users of all of the different platforms. And this is the real big achievement that we have right now.
So we can say it's a milestone, not only an achievement right now. And this is so important, connectivity. So, as you said also, Elriel, from a legal standpoint, what does IGP and I approval actually mean, and how does it increase confidence among carriers, cargo owners, banks, and insurers that electronic bills of lading can be trusted in real commercial transactions?
Interesting question. So I'm a lawyer, right? So the thing is that lawyers always chase certainty, but they rarely actually get certainty, right? And what we have here with this IGP and I approval is a huge stepping stone towards that certainty. So it gives us a kind of a stamp, a very important stamp for us in the legal community, for a bit more certainty in creating this system or framework of trust. Now, IGP and I, in their or the P&I clubs in general, they represent the insurers of the carrier, and the bill of lading is a carrier issued document. Yes, but it's also relied upon by other parties in the chain, right? So the shippers and the buyers and the sellers out there rely on it because once maybe they would want to sell the cargo once it's on the high seas, right? Or during the voyage. The banks might want to rely on it for financials, for financing the transactions, or for holding the bill of lading as collateral. To do that, the legal departments or these parties need legal certainty. Now, once the framework is approved by the IGP and I, what we're essentially saying is that the carriers, with the backing of their insurers, will now support this, will now see this as a bill of lading in electronic format. So the eBL has the same function as the bill of lading or the paper bill of lading has. And this is extremely important because in the maritime law community, we all know what a paper bill of lading is. It's been here for centuries. We need the certainty that now that we have this electronic bill of lading, we're actually having the same, only in a different medium, but it's essentially the same. And this is what this gives us.
Yes, and this is so important. Until now, companies often had to use the same eBL platform to exchange documents. How does the new interoperability framework remove this limitation, and what practical changes will businesses experience when exchanging eBLs across different platforms?
So if I could use an analogy, let's take the analogy from credit cards, right? If you remember from the very beginning of credit cards, you know, we had these little physical machines with this lever, right? These blue machines with a paper copy inside, and you would put the physical card inside, and then you would walk into a shop, and if you wanted to pay with a credit card, the shop would ask you, okay, but which credit card do you have? Because if you have one credit card, but I only have the machine of the other credit card, then you can't use it, right? This is essentially the same, or this is the same issue that we had here. Or, you know, if I use another analogy, just think if you were using one email provider, but you could not send an email to, you know, your colleague because he's using another email provider. And there are numerous other examples that the industry has solved. Because now you walk into a store, you can pay with practically every credit card or any credit card you want. If you write an email, you don't care on which, you know, what software your counterparty is using. If you call somebody on your cell phone, you don't ask first what carrier your counterpart is on, right? To the same extent and by the same token, what we've achieved here practically means if I am a seller and I use a platform, whatever platform, I no longer have to have my other counterparties using the same platform and the other side of the same coin, right? If I'm a buyer, if I'm a bank, I'm no longer dependent on, you know, the platform. I'm not forced to use the platform of my counterpart. I can choose the platform of my choice the same way I would choose any other software. And that is the big achievement here. So it's making things a lot easier. It's a lot frictionless, a lot more seamless, and making international trade basically work a lot easier, right? So you can just choose the platform of your choice, you know, with whatever criteria you want, right? If it's price, if it's quality, it doesn't matter. That's up to you. But you're not dependent on your counterparty anymore.
And it's so important because it makes the job a lot of easier and the cooperation. So I think it's the best solution. Right now, cross-border trade often involves different legal systems and varying levels of recognition for electronic trade documents. How has DCSA addressed these legal complexities through its interoperability framework, and what does this mean for truly global eBL exchange?
So in 2016, the UN Center for International Trade Law, or the Commission, sorry, on International Trade Law, the UN CITRAL, they introduced what we call the MLETR, right? So the model law on ETRs, which is electronic transferable records. One of them is the bill of lading. There are other examples, bills of exchange, warehouse receipts, but the bill of lading is one of those potential electronic transferable records. Now, what the UN CITRAL did is they published this model law, and then countries, what they can do is they can adopt that law into their own legal systems. Now, this is 2016. Like I said, the early platforms have been here for more than 25 years. The way they solved this with that vacuum, let's say, of that legal vacuum, with countries not being recognizing or not having recognized bills of lading in electronic form, they replaced the legal mechanism with a contractual mechanism. So you have a rule book for that individual platform, and that rule book replaced the law. So basically what they said is they relied on contract law. And most of the jurisdictions in the world, they respect the wish of sophisticated parties, especially business parties, into what the contract says or what the parties agreed. So essentially, you and I could do a contract, could sign a contract that says night is day and day is night, and the court would respect that because that is what we've agreed on. If, of course, we are business parties and there's no clear indication of one, stronger or weaker party. But in general, it is exactly that. And jurisdictions typically accept that. And that is also what provided the parties with a lot of confidence, because you had a contract and you didn't have to basically rely on the law saying, is the bill of lading in electronic format recognized, yes or no? Now, since 2016, actually, there were attempts in a few jurisdictions even before that. We saw that in South Korea, we've seen it in Germany, and in other jurisdictions. But since we have the model law, there were important jurisdictions that started enacting laws, and today we have about two handful of these countries, notably Singapore and the United Kingdom. There are other important ones. Recently, France, Netherlands is doing it right now, the US. China is changing their maritime code. So we're seeing this slowly adopting more and more countries and jurisdictions. And what this means is that now, yes, you have this contract, but you also have this law that recognizes the bill of lading in electronic format. And that's all we need. We don't need much more than that. So the UK, for example, they enacted the Electronic Trade Documents Act in September of 2023. If you read that act, it's about 2.5 pages long. It's very, very short. And all it says in brief, it says, if you meet these criteria, then if you issue a bill of lading in electronic format, it has the same exact effect as if it was issued on paper. And what that means for us, for the legal community, is that all of the prior learnings, all of the case law, and everything that we've had for centuries around the paper bill of lading will now also apply to the bill of lading in electronic format. And that is extremely important for us. And this legal framework that we've created is complementary, let's say. So now you have a contract, and in some countries, you have the law. So these two work together.
Okay, thanks for this. Right now, beyond the shipping lines, who stands also to benefit the most from interoperable eBLs, and what are the practical implications for shippers, freight forwarders, banks, and other stakeholders across the global supply chain?
Interesting. And where do I start? The benefits are huge. So in a few years ago within DCSA, we did this research with McKinsey where we found that if we switch to 100% eBL, there will be direct savings of about $6.5 billion. And if you apply that to all of the trade, right, so indirect savings, you get to about 30 billion. And that is huge. And that touches on, let's say, different parts of the ecosystem. So it's definitely not just the carriers. It's actually, I would even say that the carriers are somewhere last in line, because yes, it improves their processes. Yes, it reduces risks, but actually we're talking about much more than this, right? So the benefits are not, going to paperless trade. This is easy. We've done that before, right? And I gave the example of the PDF. PDF is paperless. Wonderful. But what can you do with the data that you've inserted into that PDF? Not much. If you take a platform, if you take an eBL really digitalized, what our vision is not paperless trade, but actually data-driven trade. That's what we strive for. So what can you do with this data? What can all of the parties involved in the eBL transaction do with this underlying data? And if you look at the low-hanging fruit, or the most easiest examples is the shippers, right? So the exporters, or the people actually doing the buyers and the sellers. they are the most important ones in trade, right? They're the beginning and the end of the transactions. Their benefits are quite easy because today we have an abundance of trade documents, right? We have the bill of lading, yes, but there are invoices, there are customs declarations, there are certificates of origin, there are packing lists, invoices, so many documents. And actually, if you look at them, most of them use the same or mostly the same data elements. Now, if you can use this data that you've inserted at first in the shipping instructions and then printed on the bill of lading or issued on the electronic bill of lading, you can reuse that data again and again and again. And basically, you don't have to do this manual process again of inserting all of this data. And that's really the easiest example. But if we look at this one step further or two steps further, it's if you combine this with other DCSA standards, for example, our track and trace standards and our operational vessel schedule standards, you start thinking about the vision in its whole for the entire ecosystem, right? So better inventory managements, better demand forecasting, working capital utilization, right? Because now in a cash against documents transaction, I can get paid much faster if I can present the documents faster, right? I don't longer rely on sending paper bills or paper documents with a courier and waiting 30 days, 45 days to be paid. This can actually happen a lot faster, and that means I can get paid much faster, and it makes the whole process much better. So the benefits are really huge. It's only a matter of how far do you actually want to take this, right?
Mm-hmm. This is so important. A lot of things are going to be easier and faster, and this is better, and this is good for everyone to use it. Right now, DCSA's interoperability framework is built on three key components: the platform interoperability standard, the DCSA standard annex, and the control tracking registry. Could you explain how these elements work together to create trust, ensure a single source of truth, and prevent issues such as duplicate documents or fraud?
Yes, exactly. So duplication is one of the things that we worry about, obviously, and that this is extremely important. And I gave you the example before, right? I mean, if I send you a PDF, I can also send it to somebody else. So how do we prevent duplication? Or in other words, how do we make sure that so only one person is holding the eBL and only that person is holding that eBL, right? And not, anything else, right? Or that there's only one eBL in circulation. So these are two things that are separate but related. Now, you said it right. We have created within DCSA these three layers, let's call them. One is the platform interoperability standard, or the PINT standard, we call it. And that is really the technical layer. So how do platforms communicate between them, right? How do they make sure that eBL, which you could argue is treated as an asset, so the document itself, the ETR, the transferable record, is considered an asset. How do you transfer that asset from one system to the other system? How do you make sure that the person, the user, right, not the platform. The platform is only a framework, right? It's only the facilitator. But the users is what's important, right? But if I send you an eBL, once I've sent it to you, I should not be able to do anything with that eBL, right? Because I don't have it anymore. I've sent it to you. So that is the core business of these platforms. Now we needed to create the technical layer that will allow for that to happen technically, right? So how do you transfer that asset from one platform to another? So that's the technical layer, let's say. And then we have the legal layer, and that's the standard annex that just got approved, right? So how do you create a relationship between users on different platforms? Because they all signed up to the terms and conditions of their own platform, right? So how do you make that connection? So that's what we did with the standard annex. That's the legal layer. And then we needed another layer that we call CTR, which is a control tracking registry. And that is essentially a trust layer. That's for the platforms. The reason why we needed this is that if I am an eBL platform, I provide my users with a certain amount of confidence, right, on warranties, on liabilities, and I can do that. If I'm a platform, I can do that as long as I know what I'm doing because I trust my own software, right? But if an eBL now has to travel to another platform and potentially come back to my platform at some point, how do I trust the other platform? I don't know what their technology is. I don't know what stands behind those platforms. How do I make sure that I can trust them? And that's what the CTR is there. So, and it's essentially for the platforms to have one single source of truth for every eBL that says, okay, this eBL is now here on this platform, and once it's been transferred, now it's on that platform, and there can be no disputes because there's one single source of truth. So this is technology, law, or legal layer, right? And then trust. And all of these need to work together to get the eBL transaction to work confidently, let's say.
Okay, I understand. Right now, we talked about a lot about the legal framework. And the legal framework is often considered the most challenging aspect of digital trade, we can say. What were the biggest legal hurdles DCSA had to overcome to make interoperable eBLs a reality? And what lessons can the wider industry learn from that process?
Yeah, that's actually a very important question because we sometimes neglect to look back a bit and reflect and think about what lessons we can learn from this. And what we've achieved now is the product of work that we've been doing. We call it co-creation, right? Again, this is something that DCSA has led, but at the end of the day, it's the platforms that need to adopt this, and they need to go out to their customers, and we need the customers, obviously, to adopt. And yes, there were challenges because, especially in the beginning, a lot of these platforms, a lot of these solution providers were working under, or they were under the working assumption that there won't be a lot of platforms out there, right? And there will be a very big cake that everybody can, or not everybody, but there will only be one platform or maybe two that will actually rule the eBL world, let's say. So the first thing we needed to do is to get to a common understanding together with the eBL solution providers that it's not so much about the pieces of the cake, right? But it's, or increasing the size of the pieces, but more about increasing the cake itself. So if you have even if you have a small market share of a very big cake, that is still quite a big business case for these platforms. And some obviously are bigger than the others. It doesn't really matter. But that was the very first thing that we needed to kind of crack into to get them to sit together and understand. And I think that this is something that DCSA has now had quite a lot of experience with in recent years, and specifically in bringing competitors together and being able to discuss things that are non-competitive in their nature, and actually doing things together for the benefit of the entire ecosystem. And of course, there are several things we needed to go through. So we needed to create trust between them, but we needed to sort out the rights and the liabilities, the governance, the collaboration, a common framework. How do we make sure things happen? Insurance, standards, commercials between the platforms, which is something for them to solve, obviously. But those are the sorts of topics that we needed to address with them. And that's also why it took a bit of time, because you really have to take them with you. And obviously, platforms, most of them are early stage startups, some of them more mature than others. They all have their different resources and priorities. So it hasn't been easy, but it's very satisfying to see where we got to today. And yes, we have 5 platforms, and that's excellent news. If you look at the website of the IGPNI, you'll see about 16 platforms. So it really, and this is maybe an opportunity to give an open call to all of the solution providers. You're all welcome to adopt this standard, and it's very much there for you to adopt so that you can join this network. Now we have 5, We already know about 2 or 3 more that are considering now and reaching out to the IGP&I. So it's a growing network of eBL solution providers, and we're very happy about it.
I see there are a lot of difficulties, but the benefits are too many. So I think that it overcomes all of the difficulties. So DCSA and the industry have set an ambitious goal of achieving 100% eBL adoption by 2030. Following this latest milestone, what are the biggest challenges that still need to be overcome before that vision becomes a reality?
In one word, adoption. I think that is probably the most important thing, the most important immediate step to get to that commitment that you just mentioned, right? So the DCSA members represent roughly 75% of all containerized trade, and they have signed a commitment to get to 100% eBL by 2030. And yes, it's a very hard, very strict commitment, and our members stand behind it, and we're there to help them and help the ecosystem get there. And the eBL is a carrier-issued document, but it doesn't live in its own space, right? It's dependent on the other parties in the ecosystem to adopt it as well. So the buyers, the sellers, the banks, the customs authorities, et cetera, right? So they all need to be able to interact. They all need to accept the eBL. And that's what we're looking at now. So previously we were talking about, okay, how do we overcome barriers? Okay, how do we overcome technical barriers? How do we overcome legal barriers? And we've done that. That's what we've done in recent years. But I think that the ecosystem has run out of excuses, right? So they need to stop pointing fingers and looking at each other. And they need to start looking inside and say, okay, how do I digitalize, right? And there are a lot of aspects to this, even if you think about recruitments, right? So the next people, the next generation of people that these banks, this industry is going to have to recruit, you know, if you're going to have to ask them to sit down and check paper documents, you're going to be in big trouble. The industry is going towards digitalization, and we see that with other technologies as well, right? I don't need to mention AI because it's mentioned everywhere, but this is where we're going. We're going towards seamless. We're going towards digitalization. The barriers are behind us. The only question all of the ecosystem needs to ask itself is, how do I jump on board this train, right? And DCSA is here to support. The platforms are there as well. So we very much urge everybody to just join the network.
So I will give 2 keys: adoption, and that there is no excuses right now.
Exactly.
All right. Looking ahead, if we were having this conversation 5 years from now, what would a success look like? What kind of global trade ecosystem do you hope DCSA will have helped create by the end of the decade?
Wow, that is quite a visionary question. If I had to, if I had a crystal ball, I would wish that we would actually not be talking about eBL anymore, and eBL would just be something that is a given. That is really what I hope for, and I think I said before, happy to repeat again, what we're talking about is not paperless trade. It's not simply saying that every bill of lading will now be electronic. What we really want to see is trade becoming data-driven or data-driven trade. That's what we really hope for. We want people to be able to capture the data once in the beginning of the transaction and be able to reuse it in all of the different points afterwards. We want the information to be reliable. We want there to be quality data that can be reused. We want the system to be connected, the ecosystem to be connected, and better trade. That I think is what we really want. We want trade to be faster, better, for the benefit of everybody, from the and big enterprise that's selling us the product to the last buyer out there who can now get his product much faster and maybe even much cheaper. That is, I would say, the very long-term vision or the very ambitious vision.
Okay, I understand. So I am fully covered. If you would like anything else you would like to add or any key message you would like to leave in our audience, feel free.
No, that's, I think I
Okay,
gave it all across, yeah.
Okay, this conversation was really interesting, and it
Thank you.
was about digitalization. So I think it's the best conversation that we had. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
For your time, for insights.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you
Nice
all.
to meet
Thank
you.
you very much. Yes, you too.
Nice to meet you. Bye.
Bye-bye.